My wife demanded $4.5 million in the family ranch in court until I showed the judge a psychiatrist's report on her. My name is Samuel Cole, and I am 68. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The courthouse hallway smelled like old wood and coffee. My daughter avoided my eyes. My son-in-law checked his watch as if this were a dentist appointment. Across from me, my wife, soon-to-be ex, sat with her attorney and pretended not to see me. She kept her chin high, the same way she did when she told me the cattle were too much noise and that the land would be better put to use as a short-term rental compound. I had laughed the first time she said it. That was 11 months ago. Today she asked a judge to hand her my family's ranch and a number that would drain every account I had ever built. The bailiff called our case. We filed in. My lawyer, quiet, methodical, small-town born, set down our folder and whispered, "Just answer what's asked." I nodded. My hands were steady. My chest wasn't. The ranch was more than land. My father taught me to drive on that gravel road. My mother planted the first lilacs by the porch. I buried 2 border collies under the cottonwoods and marked them with stones I carried from the creek. How could my own family act like this place was just an entry on a spreadsheet? Her attorney started with a performance. Words like sacrifice and partnership and entitlement. He described my wife as the engine of our success and called me controlling. He said she stayed through my moods, cooked for hired hands, as if she ran a soup kitchen, and kept the books no one else could read. He said her name was missing from titles because I insisted. He said I had promised to put her on deeds but never did. The number $4.5 million was spoken as if it were a given, like the weight of a bale or the price of a used tractor on a clear day. I watched her face while he talked. At the word controlling, her jaw flexed. When he said promised, she glanced at me to see if I would flinch. I didn't. I was thinking about a different room, darker, with blinds closed and a clock that ticked too loud. I was thinking about the careful way a psychiatrist asked questions and the strange feeling of watching your life get typed line by someone who had never seen your land. The judge turned to me. "Mr. Cole, we'll hear from you in due course. For now, counsel proceed." Her attorney called her to the stand. She walked like the aisle was a runway. She took the oath without looking at the clerk. She told the court about the winter we almost lost the heifers and how she set alarms to check the barn at night. She told them I shouted over a broken gate and threw a bucket. She cried. Everyone stared at the tissue in her hand. Then she added details that had never happened. That I kept her away from doctors. That I hid the mail. That I had episodes. She used the word episodes like she'd practiced in the car. My lawyer didn't object. He let the story build. The judge asked questions about the finances. Her attorney handed over a printout of expenses and highlighted totals as if neon ink meant truth. I thought of the envelope I carried in my inside pocket. It pressed against my ribs like a flat stone. When it was my turn, I stood. My knees didn't buckle. I told the judge what I do each day. I told him who my parents were and how the ranch came to me after I took care of both through cancer and a stroke. I answered what was asked. I didn't embellish. I said my wife joined me when our daughter was in middle school and made our house nicer. I said she planned the holidays. I said we had good years and thin ones. And I never once hid money from her. My lawyer asked me what changed. I said she started spending nights in town and said she needed space. She said I was too attached to the ranch. Then her sister told me I should sell and move to a condo by the river and relax. I asked who would feed the stock. Whatever answer was given wasn't an answer. I glanced at my daughter. She looked at her hands. The judge watched me as if he understood more than he let on. After lunch, the judge asked if there was anything else. My lawyer stood. "Yes, Your Honor. We submit Defendant's Exhibit 14, the report of Dr. Lena Wilcox, psychiatrist." The courtroom sound changed. Papers rustled. My wife's attorney turned pink. My wife stopped moving. The judge scanned the first page. Where did this come from? From Dr. Wilcox's office by subpoena, my lawyer said. It bears the court's seal. My wife whispered to her attorney. He put a hand on her arm. He objected. He said it was private and prejudicial. He said mental health should not be used to shame. I agreed with the last part. It should not be used to shame. It should be used to tell the truth when truth is buried. The judge took 10 minutes to think. When he came back, he overruled the objection. He asked my lawyer to summarize the parts relevant to the claims. My lawyer didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He read only what mattered. Diagnosis, timeline, notes about false narratives under stress, a pattern of taking on roles to secure money or housing, hospitalizations that were hidden from me during our separation, and the psychiatrist's assessment that my wife's relationship with an external male influence had intensified her manipulation and spending. The last detail would have been gossip in another room. In this one, it was context. My wife stared at a point by the door. Her attorney looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. The judge asked, Mr. Cole, did you know the contents of this report before today? I knew some, Your Honor, I said. I knew she saw Dr. Wilcox. I did not know the full scope. When she filed for the ranch and the money, her sister called me and told me to check. She said, You're not crazy, Sam. Don't let them make you think you are. The judge nodded. He took a breath the way people do before they lift something heavy. He set aside the printout with the neon ink. He asked her attorney if he had anything to add. The attorney tried to pivot. He said a diagnosis didn't erase years of contribution. He named birthdays she planned. He held up photos. None of those answered the key thing, the truth about why we were here. We didn't finish that day. The judge continued the case for a week to review. When his ruling came, it was clear. The ranch remained mine. There would be a smaller, fair settlement based on actual contributions, not the $4.5 million fantasy. He wrote that the court had grave concerns regarding credibility and would order a financial monitor for certain accounts discovered during the proceedings. He also issued a protective order that barred my wife and her external influence from entering the ranch. I walked out of the courthouse into bright sun. My daughter caught up to me in the parking lot. She looked like she did at 10 when she was caught lying about homework, as if the air around her had weight. Dad, I didn't know about the hospital, she said. I believe you, I said. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a statement of fact and a start. That should have been the end. But when you pull up a post, the fence doesn't fall all at once. Sections lean. Nails bend. You think a wind did it until you find the bolt cutters behind the shed. 2 weeks later, the sheriff called. We picked up someone trespassing by your west gate, he said. Your wife's external influence. Name's Randy Burke. I knew the name from bank statements, transfer memos, restaurant charges in town, the kind of breadcrumbs people leave when they think no one will look. I drove to the ranch from the feed store. The west gate was cut. Randy's truck was half hidden behind sumac. A drone sat in the bed with a high zoom camera. A notebook lay open on the seat with sketches of my property lines. The sheriff's deputy held the notebook with 2 fingers like it was covered in oil. They found bolt cutters and a clipboard with a list of the tools in my barn, down to the make and serial numbers. They asked if I wanted to press charges for trespass and attempted theft. I said yes. Randy claimed he was scouting for a documentary. He added that my wife had rights to shared property. The deputy wrote down his sentence and closed the notebook as if that closed the matter. That night, my daughter called again. Her voice was tight. Mom says you set her up. She says you hacked her records. I didn't hack anything, I said. The court did its job. Silence. Then, she moved into an apartment with Randy. Another silence. It's already a mess. I stood on the porch and watched the light change. The cottonwoods brushed each other and made a sound like cloth. I thought about the report again. I thought about the words false narratives under stress. I wondered how much of my marriage sat on that phrase like a house on a cracked foundation. The next day, a bank manager in town called me. I hadn't heard from him since we went to school together. He sounded nervous. He said my wife had tried to withdraw from a line of credit attached to the ranch that should have been closed months ago, but somehow wasn't due to processing. He said the request was flagged because of the court order. He said she had presented a document with my signature authorizing her. My signature was misspelled by a hand that had practiced and still failed. I called my lawyer. He called the judge's clerk. Within a week, the judge expanded the order and referred the forgery to the county attorney. My wife was charged. Randy was added as a co-conspirator. Their apartment lease ended without notice. They moved again, this time farther out and cheaper. If that were the second hook, it would be enough. But there was one more twist I did not expect. My son, who had stayed silent, who had said it was between you and Mom, who had told me he was busy with the startup, left me a voicemail. He said he had been meeting with Randy. He said Randy had promised him an equity deal in a company that would develop the ranch into an event space with year-round revenue. He said they had a business plan drafted by a consultant. He said my wife had invested already. Then he asked if we could talk like men. I listened to the message twice. The first time I was angry. The second time I heard a young man trying to be seen. I invited him to the ranch. He showed up with a leather folder and a haircut that looked expensive. We sat at the kitchen table. I made coffee. I slid the county attorney's filings across to him. He read. His shoulders slumped. When he finished, he didn't look at me. I thought I was helping, he said. I thought I could fix it. I didn't say that he had made it worse. I didn't say I had been young once too. I told him exactly what he needed to know. What kind of man Randy was. What the report said. What the judge had written about credibility. I asked my son to consider where this road ended. Then I asked him to help me make it end sooner. People think revenge is dramatic. Car chases, shouting matches, fists. That doesn't work in a small county where everyone knows your truck. Revenge that holds up is careful and clean. It looks like boundaries. It looks like paperwork that doesn't leak. It looks like telling the truth to the right person at the right time. It looks like a man in his late 60s putting everything he owns into a structure no one can pry open with a sad story. I met with an estate attorney 3 towns over. I set up an irrevocable trust for the ranch with clear rules. The trustee was a woman who had never missed a detail in her life. The beneficiaries were not my wife or my son, not directly. They were the land itself through a conservation covenant and 2 grandchildren through education funds that could not be reassigned. Income from the ranch would pay me a modest salary, and the rest would be reinvested. If anyone tried to sell a parcel, the covenant would snap shut like a trap and stop it. This was not spite. This was protection. My daughter came with me to sign one of the documents. She watched my hand steady on the line. After, she stood outside the brick building and cried without making a sound. I thought she loved the ranch, she said. She loves what it makes her feel, I said. That isn't the same thing. The county attorney moved quickly. Randy took a plea on the trespassing and the attempted theft. He paid fines and served weekends in jail. He posted online that it was all a misunderstanding. My wife's case took longer. Her lawyer tried to paint her as confused. The psychiatrist testified by video. The judge listened. At the end, the judge sentenced her to probation and ordered restitution for the legal costs she had forced on me with the forgery. He ordered counseling. He warned her that violations would mean jail. It wasn't vengeance. It was a measured decision. I could work with that. Justice, outside the courtroom, needed its own shape. The ranch had been a target because it was open. I closed it. New locks, cameras, motion lights. I learned who drove by and when. I asked my foreman to document every tool, every gate, every section of fence with photos and serial numbers and a list that lived in a fireproof safe. We posted signs that were clear and legal. We called the sheriff when tracks appeared where they shouldn't. After the third warning, the drive-bys stopped. People move on when it's not easy. My son stopped answering Randy's texts. He forwarded them to the county attorney. One of those messages suggested a pressure tactic to get me to settle unfavorably by staging an accident involving my livestock and then posting about animal cruelty. That message became a new charge. Randy took another deal. This time there was no bragging online. My wife showed up at the property line one afternoon in early fall, before harvest. She stayed on the road just outside the gate. I walked down because it was worse to hide. She asked for one more chance. Her face was pale. Her hands shook. She said life had gotten complicated and that people had gotten in her head. She said Randy wasn't what she thought. You made choices, I said. So did I. You think you're a hero? She asked. No, I said. I think I'm alive. She looked at the cottonwoods. For a second, the lines on her face softened, and I saw the woman who had stood on the porch in a blue sweater and told me the stars were bright. Then she turned, got in her car, and left. I watched the dust settle. I locked the gate. My daughter kept her distance for a while. Then she came back in small ways. She brought the kids to see the calves. She asked what day the lilacs bloomed best and put that on her calendar. She stopped defending her mother and started telling the truth, that she was scared, that she wanted the fighting to end, that she was tired of being told different stories by different people. I told her I was tired too. We stood in the barn and fed a newborn calf from a bottle. The calf's mouth was strong and clumsy. It bumped my hand and left milk on my knuckles. No metaphor, just a fact that anchored the day. The second hook arrived in a letter, not an ambush. A corporate envelope. A developer's offer for a strip of land that ran along the county road. The number was high enough to make my heart stumble. The pitch was slick. A heritage-inspired gateway to wine country that would honor the history of local agriculture while providing community amenities. They cited my age as if it were a flaw. They said this was my chance to leave a legacy. My wife had signed her name on a previous version of the offer months earlier, back when she thought the ranch was hers to sell. Her notations were in the margin. Fence line can shift, event parking under cottonwoods, soundstage behind old barn. I recognized her handwriting and felt the heat come up my neck. The offer was the exact future she and Randy had tried to build. I took the letter to the trustee. She read it, smiled once, and slid it back. It's void, she said. They didn't read the covenant. The covenant did more than hold the land. It required public notice and a community meeting before any portion could be considered for sale, and even then only under a drought emergency to fund water infrastructure. We were not in a drought. The developer had sent the letter anyway, hoping confusion would do what lies could not. I wrote a reply, 2 lines. Thank you for your interest. The ranch is not for sale. Please correct your records. Then I called the county clerk and asked her to add a note to the land records that no offers should be entertained. She did. The developer moved on. One evening in late winter, the county attorney called. Final hearing on restitution, he said. Do you want to speak? No, I said. The papers are enough. At the hearing, the judge read numbers into the record. My wife was ordered to pay back funds she had taken during the separation under false pretenses. It would take her years. The amount wasn't as high as my anger wanted. It was fair. When the judge finished, he asked if either party wanted to say anything. My wife didn't. I stood because it felt wrong to sit. I don't want her in jail, I said. I want her to stop. I want my children left out of this. I want my ranch left alone. The judge wrote that down. He looked at my wife when he spoke. If you violate this order, you will go to jail, he said. If you attempt to contact Mr. Cole outside the forms allowed here, you will go to jail. He did not raise his voice. He didn't need to. She kept her head down. She nodded. When she looked up, her eyes moved over me like I was a stranger. In that moment, I understood something that had eluded me for years. I had wanted to fix her. I had wanted to save my marriage by being more patient, more generous, less stubborn about land. I had believed that love could solve the problem when the problem had never been love. The problem was the story she told herself when she needed something. That story had rooms for many facts and none for consequences. The report had named the pattern. The judge had placed the boundary. My job was to keep it. Spring came. We mended fence. We burned ditches. We pulled a calf that was turned wrong and saved both mother and baby by breath and rope and timing. My son came out on Sundays with coffee and kept his eyes open and his phone in his pocket. He listened more than he talked. He helped stack hay. He didn't reach for deals based on someone else's promises. He asked me to teach him the books. I sat him down and showed him where the money went in a good year and in a bad one. I showed him the line that represented hope, the one that made men delusional if they stared at it. He nodded. My daughter brought her camera and took pictures of the calves and the cottonwoods. She framed one of the old barn window that still held a shard of the original glass. You could see sky through the scratched pane. She handed me a print. "This is what I remember," she said. I put the photo next to the safe where I could see it when I spun the dial. There was no grand finale. Justice had arrived, not with sirens, but in pieces that fitted together until the shape was solid. The ranch remained mine because I stopped pretending that quiet would protect it. The money I had built didn't evaporate into a person's hunger because I recognized that hunger and refused to feed it. The people I loved didn't fall away because I learned to separate love from permission. On an afternoon like any other, I drove the fence line and checked the gates. The west gate was intact. The tracks were mine and the foreman's and the FedEx guy's. The air had the smell of cut hay and dust and sun on metal. At the north pasture, I killed the engine and listened. What I heard was not silence. It was everything that kept going while my life had been rattled. Insects in the grass, distant cattle, the creak of a sign in a light wind. I thought of the first day in court and the report in my pocket. I had felt shame then, as if bringing a private document into a public room made me less. I don't feel that anymore. I didn't humiliate my wife. I protected my life from her decisions. There is a difference. A truck rolled up the road and slowed at the gate. The driver tipped his hat. It was the sheriff. He pulled in and parked. "Just checking," he said. "Everything's quiet," I said. "Good," he said. "Keep it that way." I nodded. He drove off. The dust drifted for a second and then fell. I am not a hero. I am not a victim. I am a man who owns what he built and what he failed to see. There is a kind of justice that feels like a metal door closing loud. There is another kind that happens when people do what they are supposed to do, step by step, without drama. I prefer the second because it lasts. If you are a man my age, you know how long it takes to build anything that matters. You also know how fast it can be taken if you don't guard it. I guarded mine. I did it without melodrama. I did it without hate. I kept the ranch and I kept my head, and I set my children free of a fight they didn't start. That is enough. That is victory. That is justice, and it is mine.
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales stories like this, hit subscribe.